Hello, Dave here. This is Learn JavaScript with me. Welcome. Chapter 10 is on forms, and this is the third and final exercise. We are working through the book Modern JavaScript, Develop and Design. It was written by Larry Ullman. More information available, larryullman.com. I picked it up off of Amazon. So here's davecoast.com, and you're welcome to come out here. There is a Learning JavaScript on the nav bar that takes you to what I'm calling my JavaScript showcase. All the exercises are out here. There's the ones done so far, and we're working in Chapter 10 exercises. So here they are, two different ways to go there. All the exercises are specific by chapter. And out here at davecoast.com, there is a global post. Here's a link to that subdomain, js.davecoast.com. Here's larryullman.com if you're interested in more information about the book. And here is all of the code, the HTML, the JavaScript, and the CSS so far. I haven't updated the actual post text with my chapter 10 stuff because this is my last one for chapter 10, so that should be coming shortly. And below that you see there's a playlist with all the videos so far, and this will be the 26th video in the Learn JavaScript with Me series. So this is a pretty complex one, so let's get started. I'm doing it. Notice I clicked up here. I'm working on this out of on my local host. See my address up here, local host, on my XAMPP server. Don't believe until the next chapter it really matters. You can probably just run all of these directly in the browser. But I'm running it as a site anyway. This specific one, you see we have a form out here. This form, we basically are going to be doing 4 different items to it. One is this button is disabled until this, the terms is checked. See, now it's enabled, disabled, enabled, disabled. We're going to provide a tooltip on certain events. For example, mouse over. Notice the tooltip for the format of the phone number. Item 2. Number 3 is for the first name, email address, phone number, and zip code. We're using regular expressions to validate them. And finally, when there is an error on any one of these fields, well, except last name, we're not doing any editing on last name, then we will go ahead and put out an error message. So from a code standpoint, and I'm not going to spend much time here on the code. These guys are all available on the download. We're going to walk through it in Firebug. But anyway, just to give you a feel, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 files involved. First one is the HTML. And you'll notice it's normal HTML page here. The important part down here where we get into all the fields and the IDs. And if you're going to work on this yourself, one way to do it would be to just copy this code over and change every place where there's an ID and stick your name in front of it, or mess this name up and get it working, and then you'll know the nitty-gritty details. Anyway, at the bottom, here's the 3 JavaScript files. These 2 are utility files, the chapter 10 utilities.js and the chapter 10 error messages.js that are utilized within the chapter 10 register.js, which is the main JavaScript file. So these 2 could have been combined into one, but they were done at separate parts. In fact, this is basically been enhanced since chapter 8, so it was really the chapter 8 utilities file. And we added a couple of utilities for this process here. So then here's that utilities.js file, and you see that we have it's creating it all under this object U, and we have a method for $. We have set text. We have add events. And notice it ends with a colon. That's how we know. We have remove event. We have enable tooltips. We have show tooltips. And we have hide tooltip. And that's it. So the way we'll use this, you'll see this later on as $$ or U.set text or whatever one it might be, just like any other method. Then in error messages, we basically have two functions, one to add the error message, two to remove the error message. Then we have the actual main JavaScript file. Starting at the bottom, we do a window on load, set an event listener, turn off the button. Then we have our validate form function. And we also have this toggle submit button, basically turning that on or off based on whether the terms are toggled on or off. And then there's some styling happening here, phone, span class, and this chapter 10 error were added in. But anyway, here's just, some styling as you see here. I just did some goofy style. You can turn that off completely and still get around with it. So we'll go ahead and walk through how all of these things process. Now this is quite a bit of stuff for a single video, so I'm going to kind of buzz through it, but if there's any items that you'd like covered in more detail, just let me know, leave a comment on the video, or send me a note, dave@davecoast.com. And here we go, let's turn on Debugger. And things are a little usually easier, right? When Debugger looks like that, and you can see the whole kit and caboodle, right? I can see the HTML, and I can see the CSS, and here's the actual screen that I'm working with. But I'm going to go ahead and detach that and bring it up like this so that we can see, so I can zoom in a little bit and make this a little clearer. So I'm going to go to script. I'm going to reload to see all sources. And it starts by bringing up the HTML. I'm going to click on the HTML and come over here, and I'm going to select my chapter 10 error messages JS. And since there's two functions here, I'm going to go ahead and set a breakpoint at the first executable statement in each of those functions. Then I'm going to click back up here. I'm going to bring up my utilities, and I'm going to go ahead and set a breakpoint Well, we do walk through this enough times. I don't think we need a breakpoint in here. I'm going to go ahead and go to register and set a breakpoint at my 3 key points, right? So we got our window onload anonymous function. Here's the first executable statement there. Here's the function toggle submit. Here's the first executable statement on there. See, we have an event listener on change. We do toggle submit. And here's another event listener. So when the button for submit is submitted, then we execute validate form. So let's go up here to validate form and click on set a breakpoint there. So set a bunch of breakpoints. Now we're ready to go. I'm going to come back out here and let's go ahead and start over. So I will come up here. I'll go to chapter 10 exercises. Go to my forms 3 exercise. And you notice that it hit our breakpoint for the window.onload. So this is, first statement is adding an event. Notice that it's u.addEvent, and we'll see it go into the utilities in a moment. And then it's using the $$ with 1 argument, and that's the regular register form ID. And notice that this function is within this function, and it's really the first argument of the add event function. So we're sending the referenced element, the type of event we want to listen for, and this is a submit event, and the function to execute when that happens, and that function is validate form up here. So let's buzz through that. I click step, it steps into the utilities.js, and it basically does this document get element by ID for the element. Notice that it's the register form ID. This is what was passed to it, and it's basically just setting the reference for that and saving us from typing that all over the place. Now all we need to do is type $$ as opposed to typing document.getElementById. That's all that guy is saving us. Okay, now we're back. And we jump back into utilities. I clicked it again, and now it's doing the add event. So if object in, right, and that's the event object, or object in, and object in dot event listener, right, which means that it does have the add event listener property. We're going to execute this statement here, else we will do the attach event if that is available. So basically this is like Firefox and Chrome browsers, and this is the IE browser, which one it uses to set this listener. So I click that, and it does the OR. See, so object in and add event listener, they're both true. So now I'm going to execute this statement here. And I went ahead and turned on that event. So now there's an event listener happening. Let's pop out of there. And I'm going to keep going here. So we're done with that statement. Now we're down here. We're going to notice we're going to set disabled to true so that that button is disabled. So let me come back out here for a second. And you'll notice here, ooh, it almost looks like that button is enabled right now. I'm not sure whether it is or isn't. Although it does say here that it is false, so it is enabled. So let me click again. Now it says true. So now disabled is true. And we see that that's a little grayer. Hard to tell, but it is now disabled. And keep going. Now we're setting another reference. So we're doing an add event this time for the terms ID. If that changes, we're going to call toggle submit. So if it's checked, so whenever it's clicked to turn the checkbox on with a check mark or remove it, turn it off, we're going to execute this toggle submit function. So I'm just going to buzz through these statements. It's basically doing the same thing we did a moment ago. And now we have that event listener. And now we're going to do one more of our handy dandy functions called enable tooltips. And we're into utilities again. And here's the enable tooltips function. And right, it gets passed an ID and its phone ID. So we're going to create a variable called element reference, and we have to use the this so it can use the values for the current object. And I hit step, and it sets a reference for it. So it gets a reference, and then it's going to set, notice that we got this dot add event 4 times. We're going to turn on 4 event listeners for the tooltips. And so if it's either focus, like if you tab in, or mouse over, move the mouse over it, we're going to show the tooltip. And if we blur, remove focus, or mouse out, move the mouse out, then we're going to do the hide tooltip. So let's turn those 4 events on. And I'm just kind of buzzing through them quick here. In fact, now, let me just keep going. And it's popping back into utilities, not much. Same thing. Now we're on to the 4th one. And I'm just clicking through it. And now we're done. We've enabled those tooltips. So we've turned on 1, 2, and those 4. So now we have 6 event listeners. 1 on the register form for the submit button, 1 on the terms ID, the checkbox if it's changed, and 4 on the phone number field for the mouse over, blur, focus, and mouse out. Let's keep stepping. And now we have the blank form. We put some values out here. So I put an A. Last name doesn't matter. It's not even evaluated. I'm going to do 1 dot 1 at 2 dot xy z abc 1 2 3 2, just to put some stuff out there. Notice I mouse in, mouse out. If I come up here and I'm going to hit tab. If I hit tab, look at that. That's focus. It brings up that tooltip. See, notice the mouse out still removes it or puts it in, but tabbing in, and then I hit tab again, it'll remove it. So I can tab in and get that tooltip up. Let me put in 1 2 3 in the phone number. City, I don't think I need city. I'm going to leave select a state like that, and I'll leave zip code with 1 2 3. Right? Notice that this is disabled. Click, 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 click. Nothing happens. I hit that checkbox, and boom. Notice that I'm in the toggle submit function, and at that first executable statement. So we hit this event right here that caused us to execute the toggle submit function. So let's create a reference to the variable. Used to that, coming into this $sign document.getElementById, and it's the submit ID. Okay, because remember, this variable here is local to this specific function. So we have to do it over and over again. And then, now look at this. If terms ID is checked, if it's true, right, we're going to set disabled to false. So if it's checked, we can turn disabled to false, double negative, but that basically makes it enabled. And otherwise, we set it to true. And right now, disabled is true, and it is disabled. Come out here, we see that it's disabled, and it's kind of gray. Let's bop on through here, and I go through. It does this reference variable again in utilities. And we're back, and now it's ready to see if it's checked or not. So it is checked, so this was true, and now it's going to set disabled. Once again, when we execute that statement, this should get a little bit darker. And here we go, a little bit darker. Yes, and now it's darker. So let me go ahead and keep stepping. So now I can click this button, and we'll go ahead and start walking through the editing. Now we hit our breakpoint and validate form because we executed our add event for the submit button, right? I just hit that submit button, and it says execute the validate form function. This validate form function has one argument, and it is the event object. And notice that that says the event object has the value submit, because that's the event that triggered this event. So if type of E is equal to undefined, which would be true in an IE, early IE version, then E is equal to window event. But we don't need to use that here because E is not undefined. It is defined as submit. And we see it right here. It's defined an actual variable. Then we create a bunch of references to these variables and see these U dots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set a breakpoint on this next variable down here. Well, I'll buzz through the first one. And you see, so it creates a variable, first name work, and basically I'm creating a bunch of references, right, with the $$ to all of the elements on the screen. Pretty straightforward. We bop up, we do our document getElementById, and that's it. So now, instead of walking through each of those, I think you can see what's happening there. I'm just going to go ahead and bop on down to this next breakpoint. So instead of stepping line by line, I'm going to hit continue, and it's going to continue on until it hits a breakpoint or it returns control to the user. So continue, and boom, now we hit this breakpoint, so we didn't have to walk through all those guys. So variable error work, we're going to set that to false. So we're going to create a new variable, and we set it to false, and this is the way we're going to know later on whether or not we have an error or not. So step, and here's the first one. Here's our first regular expression, and after we're done, we could take a look at, well, let's go ahead and take a look at this. Right, if I take this guy and I copy it, and let's zip over to the console here. Ooh, see, I kind of had it out there from playing around before. I'll paste that in there, right? So this is the first name. Let's get some space out here. And instead of first name dot value, let me go ahead and just put some ABC123 out there. And notice what we have here is a caret. This A through Z, right? Then we got these squiggly brackets, right? So here's one grouping, these brackets. Then we got squiggly brackets. Then we got a $. This slash and this slash are the beginning and end of the expression, and this I here says case insensitive. And we're using the test method, so by using the test method, it'll actually test this. So when I say run, notice it's false. Why is it false? Well, this is saying anything that's A to Z, space, period, or dash, because that's an escape period, escape dash, or apostrophe, is good. And it must be from the length of 2 to 20, right? And I have the numbers 1, 2, 3 there. That I'm saying makes it bad, so I'm going to get rid of those. If I had more than one line here, I would have to highlight it. But since there's only one line, I'm going to execute everything. I can just hit run. See, now it says true, because I took the numbers out of there. There's no place in here that says anything about digits. Let's go ahead and make this smaller. It's saying it could be anywhere between 2 and 20 characters. I'm going to say 2 and 5 characters. So that's 3. That should still be good. But let's go ahead and break that back down to 1. And you see now that it's false. Anyway, so this, it can get very complex in here. And you just have to keep on doing your reference, play around with it in the console here. I could also do, right, 1, 2, 3. Let me just, right, notice that that's false because those are numbers. But anyway, if I do A, B, C, D, E, D, E, F, right? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I hit run, false, right? But if I get rid of that F, and now it's back down within the limit of 5, I hit run, and it's true. So there is a little bit of regular expression. We'll play around with a couple of the other ones. Just practice makes perfect. Let's go back to our script here. So that's why we are dealing here, right, with this first name and the value is just an A right now. So, and as we just saw, just an A is not going to work, right? So if I change this to just an A, and basically that's the same. The only difference here is, right, the 20 instead of the 5. Let's run. So that should be false. Let's go back to our script. Right, I'm just hovering over value here. It's showing me it's an A. Step. So now it wants to add an error message. We go into our error message JavaScript file, and let's go ahead. We're going to go ahead and set an error message here. We do the document.getElementById. Could use the $$ there, and then we set up this error message here. And what this does is it basically is going to be the element ID that we use for the element. See, we're doing a create element here. And we need to give it an ID name here. So we're just coming up with the ID, the first name ID that we got in, and we're tagging on the word error to give it an ID in the DOM on the actual page. So we create the variable. And then if it exists already, which notice it's null, then we just go ahead and change its value. So we just reuse it if it's already out there. Otherwise, we go ahead and we create an element called a span type of element. We give it an ID. Notice its first name ID concatenated with the word error. We got that from here, right? So we gave it an ID. We're going to give it a class. The name of the class is Ch10 error. We're going to now put it out on the page. So if I go to the HTML and go to the body and go to, where the heck are we here? Out here into our section article. I know this is kind of painful, but let me dive on in here. Here's our field set, right? And if we come back to the script here, right? So we want to span work. So this is going to be the first name ID. So let's look at the first name ID. Here is first name ID, right? So notice that we have this guy. And let's keep going here. So now we're going to append a child to the first name ID. Step. Now if I come back to the HTML, here's my first name ID. Where is my child? Okay, bear with me a moment. Oh, append child. Oh, it just put the text in there. I'm jumping the gun, right? And now element work is that first name ID. The parent node is the div above it. And we're going to append the child so that it is right next to first name work. And it is going to be this first name ID error. And now let's look at the HTML, and we should see here's the first name. So here's the first name ID, and here's that span with first name ID error. And that's what we just did by appending that child right here, right? So we took the element, went up to its parent, and we appended the child on the end right after it. And let's keep stepping. Stepping. Now the error message is out there, right? It's adding the values. And we turn on this error work thing saying, yes, we've had an error. And let's keep stepping. So now we're going down and we're going to take a look at the email address, right? And we look at what we have in there. We have 1@2 ABC. So let's just play with one more of these guys, just because this is the good stuff. And I'm just going to Control C to copy that. Let's go back to the console here. Let me bring this over. In fact, I'm going to clear that out. Let's do a new one. And this is the email address now, right? So if I do 1@2.3, and I did Q.@2.3, right? Let's put that in apostrophes so that it is a string and it is going to be tested, right? The .test method. But let's take a look at this. So we got a caret, we got a /W, so that's like any kind of word. That's like you know, A through Z, and again, you have to look these things up to see exactly what is acceptable. A dot and a dash, right? So that's our first little section at the beginning. Then it's got to have an @ sign. So a word, dots and dashes, then an @ sign. And again, this isn't perfect. Then we have section 2 here, which is word, dots and dashes, and then a period. See, plus the / period, so that's the escaped period. And then we have A through Z uppercase, A through Z lowercase, anywhere from 2 to 6 characters. And that's for the top level domain like .com, .net, those kind of things. And there's the $ for at the end. So let's go ahead and run that. And it says false, it doesn't like that, right? But if I do test1 at job.com with 2 M's, I run that. Ooh, that's true. That's fine, right? So test1, that's fine there. Got the @ sign, right? What if I put another @ sign in there? What does that do? And I hit run. Ooh, false. Doesn't accept more than one @ sign. So let's remove the @ sign from there. And I hit run. Ah, that's true. So at the very minimal, right, I could do that. Whoops. The wrong key. That. And 2 letters, right? So at least 1 letter at the beginning, 1 @ sign, at least 1 letter in the middle, a period, 1 period, and 2 to 6 letters at the end. That should be good. I'll run that, and that's true. So there we go. So regular expressions, play with it in the console. And let's keep going here. I'll move that back over. And so we're going to do this email work. And let me step through that guy. And again, it's bad. It's going to zip out here. Do the same thing with the error message. We've done that moments ago. I'm just going to buzz through this very quickly. And that error message is out there. See, if we look at our page, see, it put these error messages out there by actually appending those children. So there's our error messages. And again, here's another one. Right, this is on the state being invalid. Okay, that was fun. Now we're going to do the zip code. Here's another one. I'm not going to bother putting this one out up there. But anyway, you see that this is /D. So the /D as opposed to the /W. So the W for word, D is digits only. So that's a number. So it's got to have 5 numbers because there's only 1 number in there. Right? And then it's got an optional because of this question mark and the parentheses there, this can happen 0 to 1 time. That's what the question mark says. 0 to 1 is a dash and then 4 more digits, right? Which is the US zip plus 4. And that's what it's going to do with that zip value. Again, this one is not good or causes an error. Please enter your zip code, right? Pop that error out there. So error work is true. So we did have an error. Then what do? We want to prevent the default behavior, which is actually submitting the form to the server, because we've already tracked all the messages here in the JavaScript. That was the whole purpose of writing JavaScript error handling. And then we return false, and we're back to the beginning again on this screen. So there we go. We're wrapping up Chapter 10 on forms by disabling the submit button based on this toggle. Oh, let me turn these guys off here. Right, so if I toggle this on or off, right, we disable that submit button. We provide a tooltip for the phone number, and this is turning on that tooltips on or off. I guess we really didn't see that in debug, so let's come out here and take a look at, right, so that is under this enable tooltips function. Phone ID is what turns it on. So I'm going to come out to utilities and come down to show tooltip, set a breakpoint here so we can see what happens. Right, it basically just set these 4 references, right, or turns on these 4 event listeners. And then we got show and hide tooltip. Now let me turn that on there. So now, if I come out here, I mouse over, you see if type of E, right? Notice I'm hovering over that E. It was a mouse over event, right? So I'm going to go ahead and create a variable called target element, and it's either equal to E target, right? If that's available. If that was null, it would use E.sourceElement, right, which is undefined. The target is defined. So this would be under IE. This is under Firefox. So there's the browser agnostic code. Let's keep stepping. And then I'm going to go ahead and do a target element previous sibling, right? So this element, its previous sibling, last child, style, visibility, right? Right now it's hidden, and we're going to change it to visible. So that's all we're doing to bring up the tooltip out of here, is turning it on from visible to non-visible, and that is this styling right here. You see that it starts out with the visibility hidden, but that's basically what we're changing. So going back to our code, right? So we're turning it to visible. Let's step. Now it showed up over here, right? Which is fine. But now notice that it just triggered, right? We can see it right now. But since I triggered that, it's already triggered the mouse out event. And that's why it's down at this breakpoint. So now let's go ahead and step. I hit step again. The type of E, it's mouse out this time. And I'll hit step again. Same thing with the E.target, right? That's the phone ID. And now it's going to do target element, previous sibling, last child, style. See the styling on there, right? The visibility, right now it's visible. We're going to change it to hidden. And when we do that, this should go back to hidden. And there it is, it's gone. So there we go. I can remove these breakpoints. I'm going to reattach this guy to the bottom. Shut him off. Once again, comments, questions, Dave@davecoast.com, or leave a comment on the video. Thank you very much for watching. We covered 4 key topics in forms: disabling a submit button until the user agrees to the terms and conditions. We provided a tooltip for an acceptable phone number entry. We used regular expressions to validate the last name, the email, the phone, and the zip. And we reported errors in line using DOM manipulation. Thank you very much for watching.